So 4 years ago, I was mowing with a DR trimmer. It's a brush machine, and some of you are probably aware of what it is. It looks like a walk-behind mower, but it's much heavier built, has a large horsepower motor, and it'll cut through just about anything that you find in its way. The one operating fault is that you provide the steering, and it's a big heavy machine. When you're on a hill, the machine likes, it's like wrestling an alligator. I mean, when it wants yeah. So, well, that's what happened to me 4 years ago. I'm trying to turn it up, and I've used this machine for many years, but I was a lot younger and probably a little better equipped to deal with it. At this point, though, it just got the best of me, and I started to feel faint and wound up gasping for breath and having chest pains. And I figured, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to leave the machine. I went up to the house. I laid down because it was really starting to bother me, and I had never had that sensation before. My wife comes in and says, you look terrible. We're going to the emergency room at the hospital, which was a first for me. And when I got there, they took my vital signs and realized that I had a problem, but in the 4 hours I was there, they weren't able to find out what caused the problem. But they did stabilize me and sent me home, told me to get in touch with my doctor, which I thought I would do, but first I needed to call this young, strong 25-year-old guy who, from then on, was going to run that machine for me, because I figured I had met my match at this point in life. But the doctor, I started with explaining what was going on, and we did a lot of tests. I had always had really, he told me that I had a cholesterol reading that people would die for. I mean, it's a funny way to put it. But I usually hovered around 170, the total cholesterol count, which you don't expect that you're going to have an artery clogging problem with that kind of a count. So we, started to think it might be a pulmonary problem, it might be asthma, it might be a lot of other things, but over time, the problem started to get worse, and it didn't, even not running that big heavy machine, but if I would dig ditches and do a lot of raking, shoveling, and post holes, I would start to feel the pains right away. So at that point, we tested everything for the heart locally here with a EKG and sonogram, MRI, and did find that there was an enlarged aorta valve, which was a consideration, but this is not the kind of thing that's going to cause chest pains. This is the kind of thing that somewhere down the line you either repair it, take it out, and put something else, a replacement, but it didn't answer the question of why I was still having chest pains. And then when I went down to, this was about a year and a half later, I went down to Stanford, went through all the tests to a much higher degree of accuracy. They were able to do a little bit more with their equipment, and the fact that I had insurance, they certainly didn't spare any tests or any methods of checking me out. They did find out that I had a 40 to 50% blockage in the diagonal artery. This is a small artery that branches off of the left anterior artery that comes down to the heart. And this little diagonal artery comes and makes a turn into your heart. And because it's smaller than the major arteries, and because of that turn, they were doing an angiogram, and that's how they discovered it, but they could not stent it because it's just too small, and the stent would just kind of break open the whole artery. So, of course, their answer, as with Western medicine's answer so often, is drugs. I had already been taking, for about 35 years, 3 different blood pressure medicines that were doing their job and controlling my blood pressure at a reasonable point. The thought of taking a 4th drug for the heart, I wasn't too excited about it. I tried it for a few days, and then I think because I wasn't really into it, I felt dizzy and found a reason to get off of it. And then when they wanted to put me on another drug, I just said, I'm not going to do that. And then I started to do the research to see what kind of alternative methods I could find to to help me get over this problem. And that's when one day, this was in March, I heard a public service announcement on our local radio station, and it was all about this program. And Petra got the word out through various methods. Then this one hit home to me right away. I signed up. I came to the first class, which was April 5th on a Wednesday, and then I was convinced that this is the way to go. So ever since April 5th, I've not eaten animal products, oils, or dairy products, and in about 3 weeks from the beginning, I started to feel good. Now, I've had the past year, I've had chest pains every day of my life, even though I did not do anything strenuous. I couldn't do anything strenuous because it would make it much worse. But there was like something lingering there that I couldn't get rid of no matter how sedentary I put a day into. I was still feeling uncomfortable, and sometimes it would even bother me when I tried to sleep. But now, 3+ weeks after the beginning of this diet, that's gone. I'm feeling that much better. So, hold your pause. This sounds really good. So what's the smart thing to do at this point? Well, I did it. I ran and got that DR trimmer and took it out and ran on the hillside, and I limited myself to 15 minutes. But I ran and I did some mowing, and I was able to do it without a problem. Now, that sounded pretty good. The next week, I put a full day in shoveling and digging and building fence posts and everything physical that I used to do in my life before this program started. And again, I did everything, and I felt really good because I accomplished, what I needed to do, and it wasn't limited by chest pains or a problem. So the next thing I've done is look at the drugs that I've been taking. And it hasn't been that long. This is only 5 or 6 weeks since this program started for all of us. But one of the things I've heard people talking about is losing weight. That just comes along with the new diet. The other thing is my blood pressure's been dropping. During this process of being analyzed and tested by various medical facilities, I was prescribed with a statin, which I was also had been on for the last couple of months. My blood pressure is dropping. I'm not feeling chest pain, so the first thing I did was trash can the statin. And then the first blood pressure medicine went about 2 weeks ago. Another one went a few days ago. I'm down to 1 blood pressure medicine now, and I have an appointment with my doctor in another month, and I'll let him be part of the decision on when to get rid of this last blood pressure medicine. But for me, it's incredible. I would have never gone to a restaurant and ordered a vegetarian meal. I would have never eaten one at home. And here now, I'm going out, and every restaurant has usually one item on the menu that's vegetarian. So I sometimes order it and then have to have a conference with the waiter to hold the cheese, hold this cream, the butter, and certainly no sour cream. And the food is not as exciting or tasty or as varied as I once tasted, but the trade-off is really tremendous because giving up a diet of normal Western diet foods, is a small price to pay for what I've gained. And I just wanted to pass that on and to say that none of this would have happened if it wasn't for Dr. Esselstyn's program and from Petra. I mean, I think we've got a real treasure here, and the community should be very proud of her. I know that our class has gained a lot, and I certainly have gained a tremendous, I've gained more years of my life, and I'm feeling great, thanks to the program and to Petra.
Thanks, Harvey.